Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well still, and welcome to tonight's second half. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Ned Only. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's second half, shall we? Alright guys, today I have Kimmy. Kimmy shared a traditional Japanese legend with us. I narrated it last week sometime, and she also sent me her partner's skinwalker encounter. Hopefully I will be interviewing him later today, but a lot of you guys really enjoyed the outside legends, when kind of resembled a Native American legend of the spider people. So today I have Kimmy. Kimmy, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate it. So pretty much I'm just going to give you the floor so you can share the legend, what I narrated, and then go on a little bit to the Imugami, which is a Japanese version of a shapeshifter, and then we can go from there.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, one of the things I had mentioned is that in Japan there's more than one population. There's the Japanese that people are pretty familiar with and kind of think of when they think of a Japanese person. And then you have an indigenous population, which the outside world is not very familiar with because there aren't very many left. And we look different. We don't look as Asian, even though we are. But we don't look what people would think of us. We have more of a square jawline, and we have longer arms and legs. We're a little bit taller. We can grow facial hair, things like that. So there's a few differences physically. So if you saw us, because there is a small population in this country now, just due to persecution that they went through in Japan. Most of being indigenous in Japan was only legalized in, 1997. So, that's a culture that's almost dead. But there's some legends that went along with that, and one was that's related to them is the Tsushigumo, which is, they considered it a spider monster, and it's also what they called the indigenous population. And my dad's from the Kyushu Islands, which is in the south of Japan, and they kind of held on the longest. So most of the legends, the more modern legends, are from that area. And Tsuchigumo literally means ground spider. And there's different versions. There's Yamagumo, which is mountain spider. And we did live in the mountains, but my dad was very, very adamant that we are Tsuchigumo and not the mountain spider, the Yamagumo. So what the legends say is that when the modern Japanese got there, that there were people already, or there were things already there, and that they appeared as these fairy-looking children or these beautiful women, but that they were actually these monsters that they, you would accept their hospitality and you would grow ill, and slowly your life force would drain. And in some cases they have legends and stories, and some of these reality games that they have now that some people might be familiar with actually have the Tsuchigumo as a monster in that game, which I have kind of mixed feelings about, but it's there. And so the legend is that that's their true appearance, but they appear as humans unless they fall ill, because they are earth spirits. And so if they're over water for a prolonged period of time, that they will become ill, and the longer that they're at sea or over the water, the harder it is for them to hold their human form. So, so one of the legends is that the Tsuchigumo, well, there's different legends. Usually they're the bad guy, but in one of the legends, the life of the Tsuchigumo was spared, and in doing so, that Tsuchigumo vowed their life to that warrior until they had saved or bought back their life by saving the warrior 3 times. And that's kind of common throughout a lot of legends. But so they go out trying to find something that this warrior is searching for. I think it was a flying skull in the story. But they go to this island, which was a monster island, I guess. And those were called yayoi. So there's another spider, but it's a different type of spider. It's larger and it's more powerful than the smaller Tsuchigumo. And the Tsuchigumo saves the warrior a few times. Along the way, though, a kitsune, which is a fox spirit, which is man and fox. So they can appear to you either way, as a man or a fox. And because they had never seen a Tsuchigumo, and they were from the same area, the Kyushu area, just the idea that a man had subjugated and a Tsuchigumo basically tamed it, I guess, the kitsune agrees and follows them and becomes a part of that little group. And it's not bound to it. It just does it because it just wants to watch this. It just wants to watch this Tsuchigumo in servitude. So they go to the island, and the Tsuchigumo saves the warrior a few times, and the kitsune doesn't have any loyalty to either of them, but it's just there to watch and see what happens. And both the warrior and the kitsune, they both get captured, and by this larger spider, and who doesn't have any sense of honor or loyalty at all. They're just kind of want to eat. They have their base nature, and so he has to win back the lives of these two. And so in doing so, they have this contest to the gods, and the larger spider says that gathers up all the yayoi, or the other monsters of the island, and sacrifices them in a volcano. And of course, the smaller spider, when it's his turn, says, I offer to you all my enemies, including the other monsters and this one. And he pushes the larger spider in. So he wins the life of that warrior and the kitsune. And there's more to it. And so they go back. They have to cross the ocean. So again, the Tsuchigumo becomes ill, can't hold its shape. The sailors, discovering that there is this shapeshifter on board, decide they're going to kill the Tsuchigumo, and probably the kitsune too, and the warrior as well, because they think that he is demonic because he's brought this shapeshifter on board. And but the Tsuchigumo says, no, I tricked him. He's I tricked him into bringing me. Not that he was forced to. So he saves their lives again and allows himself to be beaten and thrown over into the ocean. And at that point, he's already saved the warrior's life 3 times. But the kitsune sneaks away in a boat, because the kitsune is a fire spirit. Tsuchigumo is earth spirit. So water isn't good for either one of them. And so goes and rescues the Tsuchigumo. And because the Tsuchigumo has saved him so many times, ends up giving the Tsuchigumo the gift of fire. So that's where that legend goes. And also because of its loyalty and its wisdom, it's awarded by the gods as a symbol of wisdom and loyalty. So, and that's similar actually in a lot of populations, Africa, Asia, here in the United States. There's a lot of legends, and the symbols are pretty much the same. It's usually loyalty and wisdom, and kind of just watching over things. So, and we discussed this before. So how this comes in is I never really, even though that was a derogatory term that was used on the indigenous population, I never really discussed it with my children, because we don't really have other, they're mixed and they don't really have other people to discuss it with, so it just never came up. But my son, when he was younger, started having what I thought were night terrors, and he would wake up and he would think there were werewolves in the yard, or that there were monsters trying to get in, and he would, but they weren't all the same thing. And I remember we were on the second floor in the loft, and we were watching TV, and he just started screaming. And I asked him, I was like, Hunter, what is going on? And he said, they're trying to get in the house. Do you see them? And I looked out the window. I didn't see anything. And he said it was looking in the window at me. It was watching me through the window. And, so we calmed him down, put him to bed. And this went on for a little while, where he would just wake up outside and they were looking in the window, and they wanted to get in the house. They were trying to get into the house. And like I said, I thought he was having night terrors. So I would just wake up and talk to him, read him stories. But we had ended up moving, the children and I, because I ended up getting a divorce. And he was older. He's about 9 years old. So it was a rough time, but this started happening again, where he would wake up screaming, and he would say, I can hear them. I can hear them. Do you look outside? I can hear them, and they're outside. And I would look, and by the time I ever got there, I never saw it personally. But I asked him, what are you seeing? And when he described it, it reminded me of that legend, because what he said is that he would hear something, and he'd look out the window, and he said he could see something moving, and it was a large black shape, but it was huge. And we had this 6-foot tall cinder block wall that surrounded the yard, and he said that he could see it pulling itself up and then crawling on the wall like a spider would. And I told him, spiders aren't that large, and he said, well, it's not a spider. He says the arms and the legs, and I don't think there were as many. I don't think there were 8 arms and legs, but he said they look like a spider. He says, but the body is a human. It had like a human torso and head. And he was terrified. And I thought, originally I had thought of what Slender Man and, these other things that you hear of here. But when he mentioned the arms and legs looking like a spider, it reminded me of the Japanese legends, because that's exactly what they look like. The arms and legs are long. It's black. It looks like a giant spider, but it has a human torso and face, which would be terrifying. And that's when I decided I should probably tell him, if nothing else, so he could sleep. So, and again, I didn't see it. I don't know that that's what it was, but I told him, I said, your ancestors were said to be spider people, and that was the form that they took. They appeared human, but they would take the form of a spider when they needed to, or when they were ill or in danger. I said, so, and one of the things with the indigenous Japanese is that they didn't believe that when you died, you weren't gone. You still could travel back and forth. So you would still come back and look in on your family. If your family was in distress or needed you, you would come and look, and watch over them. So I told him about that and told him, if this is an ancestor, I said, the way you're describing it, I don't know anything else that fits that description. So I said, if that's what you're seeing, I said, that would be something ancestral. And I said, and they would have no reason to harm you. And so we ended up having this whole discussion of, well, what if they don't recognize me? What if they don't know who I am? Just the way a child would. And, but it helped him. He stopped waking up screaming. He stopped, he didn't stop seeing things, but he wasn't afraid anymore. And nothing ill ever happened to him or to anyone else in the family. It just frightened him. It was very terrifying. It was very frightening. And I wish when he was younger that he had been able to describe it back then, and we could have had that talk years before. Because I can't imagine being a young child and seeing something and not being able to convey your fears or that terror to the other people in the household. And I had no idea what he was seeing. All I knew is that he would wake up and he'd look out and he would see something, and I attribute it to night terrors. And honestly, I don't honestly know what it was. I know it fit the description of the Tsuchigumo, and he would have no reason to know of it. It's a fairly obscure legend, and it's something I never shared with them up until it became necessary. And that's it. I mean, he still sees things every once in a while, but he's not afraid, and it doesn't bother him. I don't know if he sees that exact thing. Sometimes he'll come and tell me, but usually he just kind of keeps it to himself now.
Right. Now, the other two kids saw it as well prior to, or no?
Oh, yeah. So I didn't know about this because they never came to me, and they never had night terrors. So theirs were more like dreams.
Okay.
But they were the same dream, which was odd. So that's the only reason I remembered it. And it also reminded me, and it's probably one of the reasons I may have thought of this, when Hunter was older and brought it up. My other son and my daughter had mentioned that they were talking. They're like, I had this dream and it was really scary, and it was this person coming up to them, and they were terrified. And they said that they were upset, or whatever it was they were seeing seemed upset, and that but that they were really tall and all black, and that the arms and legs were really really thin, like an insect, and that they had a face. The body, like the torso and the head, were human. So, and then the other one, I don't know which one mentioned it first. I don't know if it was my son or my daughter. I think it was my son, my older son, who had mentioned it first. And then my daughter was like, "Oh my God, I had the same dream." And they must have had it multiple times, because they said, "I hate it when I have those dreams." And they said it in the plural, which made me think, okay, so this is something that's happened a few times at least. And And it did make me think of that. And there was actually an animation, a Japanese animation, and that they said it reminded them of a character from a Japanese anime cartoon. But I don't watch anime, so I don't know which character it is. But there's supposed to be like a character that is in one of those animes that looks very similar, with the long arms and legs. I mean, not exact, but similar enough to where they said, yeah, it kind of reminded me of this, except for this. And I didn't say anything. At that time, I remembered the legends, but I didn't say anything. I was just listening to them, and I was like, well, that's very interesting. But I didn't put too much stock in it. I thought it was odd that they were both having dreams and seeing the same thing. And I mean, that was odd, and it wasn't till Hunter had that experience years later that I kind of remembered that what the older kids had said, and and now that he was able to describe it, and he was describing something similar, and he hadn't been there. He hadn't been there for that conversation, so he hadn't heard that dream. And this was years later, so could it have been coincidence? Yeah, it could have been, but it's an odd coincidence.
Yeah, that's a mighty powerful coincidence. I mean, considering your lineage and beliefs, and then both daughter and son, and then further on through the years, your other son having the same thing is definitely some sort of pointer that something is there. So, and it's very interesting, like you said, that the your elders, once they pass, they don't go. They usually stick around and watch over the loved ones and family, and maybe that was a family member from a long ago coming and just checking, making sure you guys were okay. It was very, very interesting, and I loved when you shared that with us. Me and you, or you and I, were just talking prior to the interview as well, and we're talking about different indigenous, Native American, Japanese, and you brought up the oh my God.
Is it the Inugami?
Yeah, your version of the Shapeshifter. And it's more or less a dog person, or
it is.
Can you share a little bit about that with us, please?
Yeah, so Japan has something similar to what they have here in the States. It's again, it follows along the indigenous lines, and it's not all of them. It's certain families. As a matter of fact, in Japan, it used to be, and some families may still do it, but that if you were to marry, and if you came from a fairly affluent family, you actually did a genealogical search on the other prospective spouse. And one of the things you looked for was if they had the Inugami bloodline. And so what the Inugami is it's a canine spirit. And certain families, they weren't necessarily Inugami, but they were more prone to being able to become Inugami. And so there's a ritual which the Inugami is created, and it's not, I don't know what the ritual is for Native Americans, but in Japan there's different ways of doing it, and they're pretty brutal. Usually it involves starving an animal, a canine, and you would at some point either it dies or they kill it, but what happens is they sort of deify it after that point, and they keep the remains. So either it's buried at a crossroads for a certain amount of time. The body's burned, the bones are kept, the head is kept, and it's kept underneath the floorboards of the family home or in this storage cupboard. And they're supposed to be able to bring good fortune and grant grant good luck. And it's not it wasn't widely practiced. I don't know that it is at all. I would hope not, because it bothers me just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not familiar with the Native American rituals at all when it comes to that. But that was another thing, and they had different looks. So here you hear certain descriptions. So there, one of them looks, even though Inu means dog, and the Gami is a spirit, so even though it's technically a person possessed with the dog spirit, some of them actually look, to me, they look more like a baboon, with that kind of baboon snout, and the ears aren't erect. They're more like a baboon. They kind of lay more against the head, and others look kind of more like the Akita, with the erect ears.
Uh-huh.
And so they can have different looks, but that makes sense if they're creating them, that they would look different. An interesting thing, though, is that the legends seem pretty consistent, is that they all have a mouse-sized spot on them, like colored patch on them. And never having seen one,
right.
I'm not really familiar, with a better description than that. But it is interesting because we do have that same legend, and it was prevalent enough in Kyushu that they had laws governing it. It's even though it was taboo, and it was taboo to marry into them or maybe even to associate with that family, it wasn't illegal to be a shapeshifter, and they had laws. So if your animal spirit, because you could bring food and pass it to someone else, because sometimes there were legends that they would become unruly and they could turn on the family if the family was unusually cruel or angered that spirit in some way, that they would turn on the family. And so sometimes there are stories that the families might try to pass it on to a neighbor or a different family. And they would do that through, giving them food, possibly with, this is pretty graphic, so I won't go into the detail exactly how they do that. But so if for some reason an Inugami family were to pass on that spirit to you, you could sue them.
And this is in like your cultural laws, like this is laws, right?
Oh, this is actual, yeah.
Wow.
This was in the 12th century, something of that nature, I think around then. Yeah, they actually made on the books laws to govern that. So if an Inugami family was sued for their Inugami causing misfortune to another family, or if they were reckless enough to pass that to another family, then they could be sued, and part of the punishment would be that family could not live in the city anymore, or in that town. They would have to live on the outskirts of town for one generation. Yeah, so it is interesting that it's legend, but it was a prevalent enough legend, and apparently there are enough stories and interactions with that legend that they felt the need to create laws to govern it. So that's just a little bit of interesting history people don't generally talk about in Japan.
That's crazy. What's interesting to me about the whole Imugami is that the two descriptions, we have similar descriptions over here. A baboon-like facial feature, or a very high-pointed ears, shorter but not short muzzle, because Akitas don't have a really long German Shepherd coyote, but they still have a large muzzle, a large enough muzzle. Those two features, a lot of people in encounters in the States have claimed to see creatures similar to that, which is very interesting to me, and that's when we were talking, another reason why I was like, wow, I really want her to, kind of share that with us, because it's just so interesting to me that, you know, oceans away, cultures, you know, huge culture differences, that there are still similarities in, you know, the legends like that. Really cool. I think that's great. And, you know, just, I'm baffled. And, you know, especially with both parts, the coincidence of your kids seeing that, and then the coincidences of the spirits or Native American and Japanese cultural lore having a very similar description of creatures, you know, the spider person or the shapeshifter canine-like. This is crazy to me. It's very crazy. So,
well, that's one of the reasons I like listening to your show so much, is because I have found those similarities. And even though I've never seen a Dogman here and I've never seen a shapeshifter here, I live in the Southwest, and and as you know, one of my partners, well, actually several of my partners are Native American, and, you know, we work at night, so we talk a lot and we share our different lores, and there's enough of a similarity that it piques my interest as well. And I've had people tell me here of things that they've caught on security cameras and they can't explain. There's a gentleman who has a cooking show here, and he was saying that people in an area just south of where I am, and these were people unrelated, but that they were telling him that they were seeing on their Ring or their security cameras, they were seeing this thing that looked like a white dog, or that's what they thought it was. But that it looked like there might be something wrong with it, like it wasn't walking. There was something odd about the way it was walking. And then this dog, what they thought was a dog, would stand up and would stand there. And you know, as far as I know, none of the things he ever got, it didn't display aggression, but they were looking at it on the camera. Right. And I work in that area. I don't live there. But I'll tell you what, when I'm doing patrols, or I think of that, and I think, you know, I really don't want to see this thing. Yeah. You know, I don't know what it is. I don't have a great description of it, and I really don't need to see it close enough to ever have one. Yeah. So that one to me is really strange, because it's not the typical thing. It's something that they see walking around on all fours, and then it stands up. Right. And it's unexpected. So,
especially in your area, there's an entity called like the Cadejo. It's usually black, but there is a white version, and it's Mexican or southwestern Native American, more or less Mexican though. Kind of like a demon spiritual dog, the white one. For some reason it's reversed. The black one, I believe, I've heard different stories, but I believe the black one is good, the white one is bad. The white one, you know, like I said, there's different variations, and until you've heard it right from a person who truly has, like you, where you truly have that culture, you know, it's just rumor that I've heard and I've looked at. But, you know, sometimes which kind of baffled me. Like, you'd always think the white one would be the good one and the black one would be the bad one, but, you know, they got that one wrong on that one, I guess. So.
Well, you know, that's not completely unheard of, because in Japan, you know, black cats are considered unlucky here, but no one has a problem with white cats. But in Japan, it is a reverse.
Oh, okay.
It's the white cats are unlucky and black cats are not, and so it is. I mean, there is a cultural thing to that as far as what color animal is lucky or unlucky. But so that is interesting. I didn't know about that, about a white Cadejo. I had heard of the Cadejo, but never a white version. So that's actually new to me.
Yeah,
So
I actually just remembered when you were talking about that, and you had said the white dog, and it was standing up,
yeah.
and it was just kind of strange that I remembered it right then and there.
Well, that's why I listen to the show, is because there's a lot of things that people see. I mean, here in the Southwest, there's a lot of things that people see. And, of course, at night, we have plenty of time to talk about it. And we all work at kind of isolated federal sites. So a lot of us contractors will talk about stuff that we've seen and compare cultural notes. But it's not something generally that we share. I felt odd when I first sent you that email, and I have to commend you because you have made me feel very comfortable. And I kind of felt, honestly, I almost felt like I was betraying my culture by even talking about it. But thing that's really prevalent here, and there are similar, like we had talked about earlier, there are similar legends with the Native Americans as with Japan, and they were not evil in the indigenous Japanese lore.
Right.
These spirits, they weren't evil. They were very loyal, and they would look after things, and they were considered wise. And in most cultures, they are. It's somehow they have evolved into something else in lore, in the more modern lore.
That's when like we were talking. I think, and I did look it up, and I'm probably gonna get a couple of comments. The white Kadeho is good. The black Kadeho is bad, but there is a white Kadeho.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh, okay. See, I had never heard that before.
Yeah, but like you said, with your culture, the belief system and lore, it was widely respected at a certain point, and then when a different culture moved in, the non-indigenous, that's when the negative aspect got put onto it. Like with the Native American, the shapeshifters and stuff like that were used for purposes. These were not just like, there was a purpose. The Navajo created the skinwalker when they were warring with the Ute Indian.
Yes.
There was a purpose of that. It wasn't just to creep people out. And then when the Europeans moved over to America, then those spirits were shunned, but like the natives lived with them daily, and they weren't feared.
Yeah.
They weren't, yes, they were feared by other cultures, but the Navajo were, they respected the witch doctor who could turn into the skinwalker and save their tribe when the warring Ute would attack. It was something lived with daily. And
that's a discussion we've had too, is because of course I have a different perspective, a different view of the Tsuchigumo than is widely portrayed, because in my opinion, even if it were real, if you invade my land and endanger my family, I probably have a right to eat you.
Yeah.
To defend my tribe and my family. And the same thing, because we've had that discussion too about the shapeshifters in native lore. They weren't originally intended to be evil. That's something that's developed. And so if another culture comes in, well, that is the danger, right? And so if that culture sees it, they're going to see it as evil.
Right. And that's why,
yeah,
an interesting fact is like with Skinwalker Ranch, it's that area is called Skinwalker Ranch because that's where a lot of the warring issues between the Ute and the Navajo were in that area.
Oh, okay.
And then white culture decided to say, hey, and it, let's call it Skinwalker Ranch because that sounds really scary, you know. So, but it's interesting. It's very interesting how cultural lore still plays out in modern day. Like, you know, we're coming up on some time here, but you know, like you said, it was up until 1997 when in Japan, when, what was it?
Oh yeah, it was, you couldn't practice, because we have tribal pact healing and we have ceremonies in a different language, and the culture is different, but there was of course, it was just like the United States. There was a push for them to assimilate. There was an assimilation push, so all that was, and it was in 1997 that they took those laws off the books.
Yeah, modern day. That's and that's the it's insanity
within our lifetime.
Yeah, 1997. I mean, we had internet then, you know, and you'd think that things would be, you know, Japan was producing some of the coolest sports cars back then, and but it's just it's very insane how some things play out throughout history. So.
It is, and the thing is, it kind of works because with the assimilation in the United States with the Native American, it did the same thing that the Japanese assimilation did with the indigenous Japanese. Is the cultural beliefs and the legends were changed to fit the narrative of course, the conquering culture, and you know, since the modern Japanese are primarily the people in Japan, they get to write the legends. They get to rewrite them from their point of view, which if you had shapeshifters and they were attacking you in the woods, you know, that would be evil in your perspective. It wouldn't be to the indigenous Japanese, but if you were a conquering race and you were being poisoned, you would think of it as evil.
Yeah, exactly.
You would, and so your legends would reflect that.
Yep, exactly. You'd rewrite the history to make it like, hey, this is evil. That's great. I mean, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us. I know I read in the comment section that a lot of people really enjoyed learning different cultural things, especially regarding shapeshifters and stuff like that on the channel. So I appreciate you reaching out to me, and I'm glad that, you know, you were able to share this with us, because not only do I respect different cultures and their lore, but I take it serious, because I don't think that any lore should be, you know, just kind of changed and switched up and made to be a creepypasta or a great Reddit post or something like that. So, but so it was great having you on. And
thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to say to everybody before we end the interview?
Well, you know what I would say actually to you is that I really appreciate what you're doing, and your show has actually been the forerunner to many of our cultural exchanges about our legends and our lore. Because, like I said, I'm in the Southwest. I do work with have Native American partners when I'm on watch, and we do discuss these things, and we discuss what the lore is now, what it originally was, because that was one of the conversations we had as well. Is that the shapeshifters in my culture, and I said, and I believe in the Native American culture, they were not originally created to be evil. It's something, that belief has evolved over time. So I really do appreciate what you do, and I like hearing everything you do, and that you give the opportunity for us to do these exchanges, because honestly, we don't know enough about what's going on, and I think it benefits everybody to get the different perspectives, and the more information we have, honestly, the better.
Yeah, I agree.
Because not everything is to be feared,
Right.
There's a healthy respect is good, though.
Yes, 100% agreed on that one. So, well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Well, there you have it, folks. Tonight's second half. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Some just absolutely horrific experiences and information. Goes to show, United States is not the only country to have shapeshifters, and the Japanese shapeshifter, that is absolutely terrifying. My God. Guys, thank you for supporting the channel. Your support is what makes this channel continue to grow and go, and honestly, what gives people a chance and a place to share their experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for answers, and God bless.